All right, folks. How are you? Good evening. TGI Fridays, TGI for everyone. Hurricane H here, another live Q&A with Dr. Heim all the way from Australia. And I think today he'll be outside of the actual main continent, the mainland there. So I think he's in Tasmania. So we'll be looking forward to having him in a few minutes. This is the opportunity to ask questions live and join us on the with the discussion on the discussion in the discussion. And you can call in 732-332-8493, or you just have to chat with us live, and we'll be able to get your information here, and the doctor will be able to answer the questions live. Now we do have a series of questions, but it will be always great to have live interactions. So again, this is your monthly date or appointment, or just basically this is the time where you guys can do some just questions, random questions that you might have about mental health or issues that can affect the psyche and that kind of thing. So again, we have a few minutes, so don't be strangers. Join the discussion, folks. Come on. Um, we have a very good list of questions already, but please, if you have the opportunity to be watching us today, just do so. I mean, this is now live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So any of those, if you're there, say hi, come on. And if you're out there, just enjoy. I mean, it's Friday night. I know you have better things to do probably than being on the phone with us or being live with us. But hey, we'd love to hear from you. Other than that, I mean, just please enjoy the other programming that's on the network and on the radio. You can download the app, iHealth Radio, and you can also just watch on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Roku TV if you have it. You can also just download the app there, the EMBC TV network app, as you can see on the logo here. And you should be able to just have, every show that we play. And a lot of these shows actually are repeating. This is an actual live, so I am live. This is not just a or what we call the simulated live. This is a real one. I'm here, so hey, say hello, my friends out there. There's a lot of you out there, so whatever you're doing, I hope you're enjoying it live and being positive. That's all. So again, we're waiting for our dear doctor to join us, and then we'll get started. Stay tuned. All right, 5 minutes, my 5 minutes. Climb to your prime with Dr. Heim. Time for mental health and for your live Q&A opportunity to ask questions to the one and the only world-renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Christian Heim. And he's been with us for the last. It's been almost a year actually since we started this series, and it's always the last Friday of the month. So unless we have something going on in that month, but typically for the most part we keep that schedule, and that's a recurring event. And also you can catch them later. But we'd love your real interactions with us here on the channel. And yeah, feel free to call us and feel free to follow or chat with us in the chat box here. There he is. There is. Dr. Ham is on, and we'll bring him in In a second. Here we go. Here he goes.
All right, good. You can hear me.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Hurricane. How are you?
Doing terrific. Actually, I'm seeing a change of scenery on your side. So I believe, as you said, you're in Tasmania, right? That's where you are.
Okay, so I'm in Tasmania. Tasmania is this little island at the bottom of Australia. And sometimes I come here to work. There's some hospitals that I work at here, but we ended up catching COVID. And so we have been stuck in a hotel for 7 days, isolating and trying to get over this bug.
Oh my God. And you still
Yeah.
made that's commitment. Oh man. Well, how you doing? I mean, are you feeling okay? I mean, has it been light?
Okay, well, I didn't have to go to hospital. That was a good thing. All
Good.
right.
Thank
But I
God.
was horizontal basically for a week.
Wow. Yeah. How things actually in Australia when it comes to COVID? I mean, I know some countries they have little spikes here and there, and I mean, I'm assuming this is the Omicron version, which is the lighter version, and so it's
Yes,
not.
it is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So
It
it's
is,
more.
and we are going through a spike. There are all Australian cities are having a spike in Omicron. Basically, everybody is not everybody, but a lot of the population is unwell. However, Omicron is nowhere near as bad as Delta was, so we're very fortunate here, Hurricane, in Australia, as I hope you are where you are.
Well, I have to say, I mean, so far I've had friends who had it recently, but nothing major. I mean, so far it's been quiet. So again, I don't know. It's also there is a change of season for you guys right now. So we just switch the north and the southern hemisphere just switch. You know, the winter and
That's right.
so
That's right. We take.
Doctor, I lost you there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I'm
I
back. I'm here.
I know you were just talking about how the weather has changed with you guys.
Yes, yes. So we're coming into our winter. In fact, down in Hobart here, we have this wonderful mountain that looks over the city, Mount Wellington. It just had a little bit of snow on top. There's just a little bit of snow left on it. That tends to be rare for Australia, although I do need to say that Australia has more skiable slopes than any other country in the world. Just that they're not very accessible. They're a long way away
See,
from
I
any.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's listen. I mean, it's a big place. It's not just it's a country, but it's a continent on its own. So hey,
that's right. That's right. It's quite amazing that way. Yeah.
yeah. And again, I'm sure the winters can be just as bad, right? So for the most part, right?
Oh well, winter's winter. Yep, yep. And the more south you go here, the longer the winters. The more north you go, don't have any winters, but you have not summers.
Well, listen, I got you on both sides here of me, so I'm actually on 2 feet. So don't.
I'm
Just
surrounded by
this is the
hurricanes.
profile. This is the other profile. So hey. Anyways, so doctor, we're gonna get started, and hopefully we'll get some live interactions as well as some live calls. So let's just do that. I'm just playing a little bit here with our view, so I can get you in the prime scene here. So this is you. All right.
This is me.
So I have a first question. This actually came in on a chat the last time. And just as an FYI, last time they Facebook kind of stopped the feed because of the music I had playing before, so I stopped playing music.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why we weren't able to chat live with them. But the question was, why sometimes we feel so empty and alone, even with people around us?
Okay, that's actually a very good question, Hurricane. Why do we feel so empty and alone, even with people around us? And Hurricane, this is an existential question as much as it is a psychiatric question. Now, what I mean by an existential question is it pertains to all of life. And it goes something like this, that although there are about 8 billion people here, we are 8 billion individuals going through life together. So the strange thing about that is that sometimes we feel like we are part of what we call the human race, but more and more we feel that we're less a part of the human race. And so I've used a small town analogy before where you know who you are when you live in a small town and everybody knows you and you tend to know everybody. But it's like, particularly in the last 40 years when the world's population has doubled, There are less small towns. All small towns have become like a big city. And so we feel like an individual lost in a big city. So rather than having a connection with more people, we actually have connection with less people because we get overwhelmed by the people around us. And the more people that there are around us, the more people are different, because we are essentially very, very different. But we clash with people who are very, very different. And this makes us feel very alone inside. And so this is why the big city syndrome is one where you can be in the midst of a whole lot of people and, as the question asks, feel very, very alone. And I know it sounds a bit glib to say, but the way to get over this is actually to start talking to people. And maybe I should say first, to listen to people, to get to know what people are actually like and to accept their difference. Because in our differences, and this is going to sound like a lovely cliche, in our differences, we are united, because everybody that you meet is going to be unique. They're going to have an experience that you don't have. They're going to know things that you don't know. They are going to approach life in a way that you don't. And if we can come to appreciate and accept that, then we start feeling less alone.
Well, Doctor, I mean, we're known to be like a social kind of creation, right? A social person or personality or being, yeah. Exactly. That's keyword, yeah. Right? So why, again, it's amazing that so much we're getting involved with people, but yet at the same time we feel this separation, and we all kind of have that maybe I experience it too. Sometimes you just want to be without anybody and just by yourself. Yes. There's something in us that drives that.
Well, part of what's driven, and I'm going to go to an evolutionary perspective here, Hurricane, because when there were much fewer humans around, right, we would stick together with our clans in our caves, if you like, and we would help each other out, right? Then if you go to a time like at the Middle Ages, when people were traveling from town to town, there were town and city walls, and there was a forest out there where things were dangerous. If somebody was traveling, then we'd actually be expected to give them hospitality, a form of love. It's called Xenia love. It's hospitality, where you help to keep somebody safe, a traveler safe for the night. Whereas now, when we're in the midst of a population explosion and we are more in the midst of strangers, it's like everybody's a stranger out there, and we can't put strangers in our rooms to give them a bed for the night every night because there are just so many. Now, the good thing about the civilization that we have put together is that we have systems in place so that if somebody is homeless or if somebody does not have a bed for the night, there are places in society that people can go to that they will get taken care of for a night. So collectively, we have a lot of good infrastructure in place to make sure that our survival needs are met. However, what we gain collectively, we start losing individually. And I'm going to go to some evidence that shows that just as families in 1850, the average household had about 6 or 7 people in it. Now, 2010, the average household has about 2.5 people in it. So we are having more space, but we are living with less and less people, which means that although we are social creatures, we're living less and less with each other as social creatures and more alone. There are some cities in the world, and I'm thinking about Tokyo at the moment, where the single occupancy rate is almost 50%. So half of households in a place like Tokyo is single occupied. So even though we're social creatures, in the civilization that we have evolved, we are rendering each other more and more alone.
That is amazing, Doctor. Just to hear that. But you're right. They're true facts. And so, but then I want just to kind of link it to one item, which is the social piece. Now we are feeling alone. We are, to your point, statistically, there's that. But then, is that potentially due to the fact that we're like in social media, or maybe like we'd rather cover ourselves and stay behind the screen as opposed to being really with others?
Okay. All right. So yes, so we're linking it to social media, and social media in a way is a solution to the problem of us being alone amidst so many people. Now, if we can say that the camera never lies, you can say, yeah, you're right there. But if you want to say the camera always lies, you're right again. Because Hurricane, here we are, you and I linked up from halfway around the world, and we're able to have this interaction. But there's so much that this interaction hides, all right? You didn't see what I was like just 10 or 15 minutes ago. You don't see the rest of the room. We have a facade that we put up, which is acceptable to each other so that we can get through these interactions. And so there's this idea of our whole lives becoming a bit more superficial. And we all know the studies about people seeing how many likes other people have on Facebook, or comparing themselves with the profiles that people put on social media. And we know about all of that because we're actually comparing our inner selves, our inner existential loneliness, with the facade that other people are putting in front of us on social media. And unfortunately, that's a natural thing to do by humans. And we always tend to think that we come out second best. However, Hurricane, if I ever get to live where you are at the moment, and we get to spend some days together, let's say we go out hiking or camping or whatever, and we get to spend time 24/7, then we will get to know each other far more, and we can't hide ourselves from each other. So we will get to see the good of us, but we'll also get to see the bad of us. And that means not only tolerating that, but accepting that so that we grow closer as people. And this is the experience that we are having less and less of in our media-driven society.
Well, so doctor, it is said, right, that to know someone best, you got to travel with them, do business
Yes.
with them, or lend them money. Those are three things you really can get to know someone good, bad, ugly, right? To your point, everybody's got a personality until we actually spend some real time with them. And travel is actually a big one, because that's when you really, I mean, just within the family, you get on each other's nerves. So imagine.
Well, that's right. That's right. This is the bizarre thing. We are human creatures, but it is natural to get on each other's nerves. If you are getting on somebody else's nerves, congratulations, you are being honest with them. You are encountering a real person. They are encountering you. Unfortunately, what we have now is a situation where through social media, we hold back the parts of ourselves that are not as acceptable, and show the bits of ourselves that are nice, bright, and squeaky clean, hoping that people will accept that. But the trouble with that is it sets the bar at a place where if you start showing that you're actually not the perfect person that other people think that you are, that's not going to be acceptable. And so this whole idea of what is acceptable in society is actually becoming narrower and narrower rather than broader and more accepting, which is very strange given the world that we have at the moment.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Doctor, for that. I mean, and I know we have a lot of questions. I just wanted to quickly, since we're alive, folks. So if you're watching, call some friends, and you can call us live 732-332-8493. The number's on the screen. So please join us in the discussion, or you can chat with us from Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Twitter, as well as YouTube. So if you're there, you can just send in your I guess questions or whatever you have for Doctor here today with us. I mean, he is actually literally coming on the show while he is still coping with COVID. So we thank him with all our heart, and he's committed to this mission here and sharing his wealth of knowledge and wisdom with us. So, Doctor, that being said, I have the next question. Are we ready?
Okay. Yes, I am ready.
All right. So I have read that the depression rate is super high in the Scandinavian countries due to long months with no daylight, or vice versa, no night and the midnight sun. I personally get anxiety and really depressed on gloomy days and weather, and excited when sunny days happen. How does this phenomenon work, and what is the psychological factor behind it?
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you for that question. So the question basically talks about how light affects our mood, and this is actually a very well-known phenomenon. In fact, we've looked to see why an illness like schizophrenia. Schizophrenia occurs across the whole world in about 1% of the population, but there are some pockets of the world that have more schizophrenia than others. And one of the hypotheses behind that, so in other words, one of the ideas behind that, has to do with light. And it has to do with the amount of vitamin D, because a lot of these places are places that are deficient in vitamin D. So there is a hypothesis that says having low vitamin D levels can contribute to schizophrenia. We have the same hypothesis in depression and anxiety, because if we think of the brain chemical serotonin, the serotonin system is what mediates the feeling of happy, sad, but also anxious, calm. So anxiety and depression in psychiatry use the same class of medications when you're using medications to treat those. All right, so things have gone so far as to know. So we have one diagnosis that's called seasonal affective disorder. So in other words, people will find, as this person has, that their mood will go down not only in gloomy days, but coming up to winter or during winter, their mood will be down. And coming into spring and summer, their mood will be up. In fact, it's been well documented that particularly in colder climates, suicide happens more frequently just before winter. It's as though people make the decision, am I going to get through another winter? Whereas if they get to spring, it's like, okay, I have spring and then I have summer to take care of me and I can feel better. This affects our brain so much that in Germany in particular, there are psychiatric clinics that work with light to treat depression. So you will actually go into a light-filled room for a certain amount of hours per day to get your quota not only of vitamin D, but of the brightness, which is not only a metaphor for our brains, but a signal to be alive. So our whole sleep cycle is predicated on light. When light fades, the sun goes down, melatonin gets released, and that actually will start us off into a sleep cycle. When you wake up in the morning and the light goes back on, that is then a signal to turn off the melatonin so that it is time to get up and ready for the day. Now, melatonin is not the only chemical. We also have cortisol levels that change during the day, and all of these have to do with our wakefulness. But the point is, it affects our mood. Now, that's what we know scientifically. What we don't know scientifically is why there are some people who are much more affected by this than other people. But having said this, Hurricane, I'd like to say that whoever posed the question is quite right. Light and weather affects mood. And what can we do about it? Be aware of it, and to get the amount of sunlight that is appropriate for you, and to make use of daylight hours, because the day is for living.
Well, so doctor, it just on that same note, right? The concept, right? When you are, like, some people, for example, work at night, right?
Yeah.
And they sleep during the day. I have tried that. And when I worked at night or had a full night, with no sleep, traveling, to the other side of the world, it is very amazing how your body reacts. It's not the same. You can sleep, hours during the day. It's never going to give you the same effect that at night. So it's amazing how it's all related. And so that leads me to another question. This is not about, it's part of it, but just something that I came up with as you're talking. So now we oftentimes we talk about positivity and negativity. Does that have any impact on that? I mean, someone who's has anxiety, depression, all this stuff based on this, will that make him, more having negative thoughts versus positive thoughts or behavior?
Oh, wow. Okay. So more positive thoughts and negative thoughts. Okay. Hurricane, I'm going to come back to the sec because you brought up the whole idea of jet lag and working shifts and what that does to the brain as well. And I just want to say something about that before we get to the positive and negative thoughts, because humans were actually not built to do shift work, right? Shift work is an adjustment that we have made for our society. Indeed, I have made this adjustment. In my earlier days as a doctor, I have had to do a lot of night shifts, and I've had to try to sleep during the day. And I am just not cut out to do that. I am really wrecked after a day without sleep at night. even going into a cycle where I'm sleeping during the day and working at night, I just can't function. And at one stage, I actually wanted to be the sort of doctor that delivered babies because it's very emotional and it's very positive. But because it involves a lot of night work, I realized that I just wasn't going to succeed there. So I did what I could to still work with people, which is psychiatry, but I can still work in daylight hours. Okay, so to your question about positive and negative thoughts, and whether light can enhance positive and negative thoughts. From a scientific point of view, it's a really problematic question because we don't know where thoughts come from, right? The most that we know about thoughts is that we have a thought or we make a decision subconsciously a good 7 seconds before we consciously know that we have made a decision. So that's actually bizarre because it means that the decision-making process is not as conscious as we'd like it to be. And the explanation for that is that we make decisions all the time automatically according to our beliefs and values, which over time become hardwired into our frontal lobes. So we'd like to think that we get information and that we then figure out what we're going to do based on this information right there and then consciously. But in a sense, we've already made a decision based on our whole being and what that whole being has been for decades, for those of us that are decades old, right? So to the question as to whether light and dark can increase positive or negative thoughts, scientifically, the answer is we don't know. However, dark things and negative things tend to happen more at night, or at least that's the metaphor we give ourselves. And the idea of brightness and light and positivity we associate with the day. But that's not science. That's metaphor.
Well, at least we see it as it hasn't been proven yet, I guess. Right?
Right, that's exactly right. Yeah, we see it. It makes sense. It's common sense, but I can't say that scientifically that's what happens.
And I don't want to ask for any more. Thank you, Doctor, for that. So, folks, again, just to remind you, we are live. This is not a replay. This is not a simulated live. We are actually on the set right now with Dr. Heim, live from Tasmania, way out there, down under, really. And
yeah, it's the down under the down under.
That's right. Yeah, it's actually the southern part of Australia. So hey,
that's right. That's right.
So folks, please, chime in, send in your messages here, and while we answer the questions that we have already from the last episode, so we'll continue. Number is on the screen again, 732-332-8493. Feel free to call us. Now, the next question, it's a little sensitive, Doctor. So I just want to, I'm not sure how we're gonna go proceed with it, but so Mike, by the way, the previous questions were anonymous, so I have no name. My kids are questioning some of the new changes in laws regarding the sensitive topic of gender classification. We are a conservative Southern family, and we are unable to explain this to our children age 9, 13. We certainly adhere and respect the law and people's choices, but we feel this is confusing to the kids and impacting them psychologically. What is the true psychological impact caused by such shift in ideology, understanding that for millennia and under all major faiths, the genders are set? Yeah, so I mean, when I read that, it's Donald from North Carolina. So
okay,
it's a tough one.
Okay, it's a tough one, Hurricane. It is a very sensitive topic, Hurricane. But first thing I need to say to whoever asked the question is you may be saying that you can't explain this to your kids. Well, the matter is the peak body, the subspecialist body of scientists and psychiatrists that are taking care of this cannot explain it to the scientific world. Okay. So in other words, we are firstly in an area where there are a lot of unknowns. Now, as adults, we have to deal with unknowns on a day-to-day basis. The difficulty is that children do not deal with unknowns as adults. A child's brain works on different wave patterns. In fact, there's a preponderance of alpha and theta and delta brain waves in the child's brain, which means that the brain waves are slower. In an adult, we are talking in beta brain waves, which is faster. Now, the difference is that children will absorb information very quickly, which is why a child can learn 5 languages and keep them all apart, whereas an adult learning 1 language is a truckload of work, and we've talked about that before. But it means that this very sensitive issue, which actually has to do with children, right, not only becomes a hot topic, but it's a very difficult one to deal with as well. So the short answer is to wait until scientists get a grip and come up with something that actually helps all of society get their heads around things like that. The longer answer and the more convenient answer at the moment is, I don't know, I don't understand, but here is a framework to think about it. And that's the sort of things to say to children, okay? The thing to say to children is that there are many different types of people in the world. You are a girl, a boy, whatever, okay? And we love and accept you exactly the way that you are. Because at the bottom of the whole of this transgender debate is acceptance. And the thing about acceptance is that absolutely everybody wants to be able to be accepted as a human being. And that is actually a good thing, because all people can be accepted as human beings, because guess what? Everybody is a human being. Everybody wants to be part of the human race. And this kind of harks back to that existential loneliness that we talked about in the first question, right? We don't want to feel alone. We want to feel part of it. All right. So just a few things to frame a discussion for adults in this. Firstly, we're actually talking about some individuals' very, very private lives. Now, if all of us had our very private lives talked about on screen in social media every day, we wouldn't be too happy about it, right? On the other hand, this is a population issue. This is an issue that we as a species need to come up with. So there's a balance between the individual and the population. The thing is that when science started doing gender reassignment surgery, and this started in the 50s and the 60s, it was for a very small group of people that had the feeling that they were born in the wrong body. And so this surgery and this therapy was very good and found to be very positive for the people that needed it. Here's what happened, however. A study this came out of Norway, showed that in 2012, there would be about a dozen children per year that would say that they didn't feel that they were in the right body. 10 years later, in 2022, it's several thousand. So in the same period of time in the United States, there were about 6 clinics working in the transgender area 10 years ago. There are now over 60. Now, when you see rate rises like that, a 10-fold increase, or in the case of the Netherlands, perhaps 100 or 200-fold increase in a process, you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Is this the same thing going on now that was going on before? And this is where the scientific community are divided. Some people are saying, yes, this is just the same thing. And other people are saying, no, this is a different process that's going on. The other thing to talk about is what is normal. And in all of human history, we've never been able to give a definition to what is normal in being human. And one of the great advances in our society is that we're broadening this idea of what is normal. However, when somebody comes to me with depression, I don't say to them, depression is normal, you've just got to put up with it. They want to treat it. So in other words, it's a problem to be treated. And so here we are in a very sensitive area again, where is being transgender a problem? And that was the old way of looking at it. Or is it now a variant of normal? And if it's a variant of normal, what does that actually mean? And should it actually be treated if it's a variant of normal? So that's some of the flavor of how complex this is, Hurricane, because it is a complex issue at the moment. And the World Professional Organization for Transgender Studies, and I've just forgotten exactly what it is. It's called WPATH, WPATH. Are just putting together guidelines of how we can come together as a world community scientifically to think about this very, very difficult topic.
Thank you, Doctor. So the by the way, Donald from North Carolina, that was the person, and part of it was he referred to conservative and also the concept of faith, right? So ultimately, there's a big debate. I mean, I know in the scientific realm, in the social realm is one thing, but in the religious realm is a little more sensitive, right? A lot of folks, churchgoers, temple, mosque, or any other denominations, there's there's a resistance to this because of the belief, because of the text and everything, and so that's a little bit of a challenge, because if people are, I guess, true churchgoers, or just believers, whatever that they believe in terms of religion, they follow those tenets, and basically they're very strict about them. And so there is some debate in that aspect too. And talking about acceptance is very difficult when it comes to religion. So how do we relate that? I mean, I know there's always a debate, the science, church and state, science and religion sometimes they collide. And this is a big topic this is almost the same thing as abortion versus no abortion and things like that. I mean, it's in the same realm.
Oh, it certainly has. And let me speak to that for a second, Hurricane, because what you brought up is the intersection between church and state. But here in particular, we're talking about an intersect between science and politics, because you're exactly right in what you're saying. So because this has to do with identity, because whether I am male, female, or something in between has to do with the way I identify, right, then it becomes somewhere on this spectrum of conservative to progressive. And the way that our politics has shaped our lives is over the last 100 years in the USA, for example, there's always been this tension between conservative and progressive. And the bottom line is we need the progressive elements, otherwise we wouldn't advance. But we need the conservative elements, otherwise we would advance into very strange areas. And so there's a tension, but it's a good tension, and we need to keep both. However, when it comes to science and medicine, politics is supposed to have nothing to do with science or medicine. So if somebody breaks a leg, the whole idea as to whether somebody has a conservative or a progressive point of view in their politics really doesn't have much to say about their treatment. However, when the idea of what we should think, as soon as we use the word should, it becomes an ethical problem rather than a scientific problem. So politics enters science. And this brings about something else, because in a way, we have this problem, if you'd like to call it that, because now we have the technology to do something about people who feel they need to have their gender reassigned. Before we had this technology, and I'm talking about 70 or 80 years ago, we didn't have these ethical questions. But now that we have the technology and we can do things, we actually need an ethics to be able to support all of that. And ethics in science and medicine always lags behind the technology. So in other words, we find answers as to what we should do later than what we can do. And that's true of abortion, that is true of euthanasia, that is true of stem cell research, that is true of gender reassignment surgery. And somehow we've got to marry the two up so that the ethics and the capabilities, technologically speaking, are in harmony. And we've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go.
Well, it is. This is just, the beginning of it. And I think it's getting more on the spotlight. And I think the other part of it, which, now it's more of a debate, is like, you can select X, meaning that you don't know and you're not sure. So it's like you're in limbo. And that there is also that debate. And also now there's the debate about where like for example restrooms, is a question. Do we which way do we go? Do we go to the women's or the men's side? And that's also, these are all discussion topics that have been sensitive. And again, this is a month where this has become very I guess on the news and the media, everybody, this is what they refer to as Pride Month.
Yes. Yes,
So,
and Hurricane, this is exactly another layer on top of this. It's because we have social media and we can exchange information very quickly that we're actually talking about this. Whereas decades ago, somebody who was transgender was basically unknown to the rest of the populace, and would have had discussions with their doctor, with their support workers, as to how their lives would run. Now, all of a sudden, you and I and the general population are forming opinions about things that are actually very difficult to understand. And that's actually a bit of a stretch, because it's very hard to form an opinion on somebody else's life, particularly when it comes to their identity.
it is. Listen, it's a tough one, and I know. I mean, I started with the idea this is going to be a rough, question, but thank you. I mean, you've covered a lot of angle there, and I know it's the beginning, and it's probably going to be a topic for the next decade, if not more. So we'll see how it progresses, and maybe we can have it at if maybe somebody else will send another question or interaction about it. We'll I guess react to it.
Well, that's true. But before we go on, Hurricane, just before leaving that, for us, it's just a topic. For a lot of people, including people that I work with, because I have worked with transgender people, right? This is their lives. This is their identity. This is their feelings. This is part of who they are. And just even that tension of us having a cerebral discussion about really deep feelings about somebody's very existence. We need to be able to talk with that sensitivity, so that when we talk, it is not just about a topic, but it's about something that is very, very close to the core of somebody's existence.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. That's actually very sensitive. Thank you.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, but so just on that note, I mean, from a psychiatry, level or psychological level, I mean, are there any, I guess, reasons, or again, I'm not sure, but obviously people are questioning, like, well, why would someone have that debate, or is that something that is just a personality, or is that something that they maybe encountered throughout their childhood? Is there anything that is actually right now determined in terms of the psychology and just science in general? I mean, I know you said that the community is still divided, but anything specific that can drive someone, for example, at an early age or at a later age, to decide to make a change?
That's a huge question.
Sorry.
Hurricane. The short answer is yes. There are psychological aspects involved. But if I start talking about them, then I've got to talk about a whole lot of them. And the thing is that we are trying to bridge the objective world with the subjective world. So let's go to one extreme of the debate that says that people have got either XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes, so therefore it is either male or female, because that's what the physical biology shows us, right? Now let's go to the other extreme. Well, my feelings and how I identify are actually very, very important. And that is a determining factor as to what my gender ultimately is. Now, one was objective, one was subjective. But in our experience of life, we need both. Life is not totally objective and life is not totally subjective. And in fact, we do not have the answer to where the divide between objective and subjective is. Like, I know that the brain is objective and I can study different parts of it and chemicals that go on up there, but the mind is totally subjective. But we know that the mind exists because I've got one and you've got one, and our minds are interacting. And so the whole subjective objective problem, the mind brain interface in science, also comes into the transgender realm to inform what we're talking about here. Can you see how huge this is getting?
It is. Well, listen, I mean, I think we have enough today for, for this. I know there's more to this discussion, and probably in time, maybe there's more room to, I guess, review. I guess the question came in because it's the
Yeah,
appropriate
yeah,
month. Yeah.
yeah. Could I suggest that if at one stage you decide, look, we'll just do a whole session on this, okay? Then we could sort of spend all the time and methodically go through and talk about some of the issues, knowing that the very peak body have not reached answers yet, right? But it'll give people a framework about how to think about this very complex topic if we spent a whole session on it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I figured this is not something you just brush off, but thank you. I mean, you covered a lot of angle in very little time, so I appreciate it. And it's a very difficult question in terms of like the reaction and the family impact and so on and so forth, and also the personality is
Yeah,
and what's behind it. So it
yeah,
is a tough one.
yeah.
Moving on. I mean, we're almost up, the hour. And again, folks, we are live, so please feel free to dial in the number or that's on the screen, or you can just basically chat with us on the chat box here, or you can send your questions, by email, and we can certainly put them out, for questions at the next session, which will be, I guess, the last Friday of July. So now the next question is, I'm sorry, there's a few of them. I'm having vivid nightmares and can't seem to know what triggers them. Is there anything that can be done to prevent these from happening? Sorry, John.
Okay, John, nightmares, real problem. Okay. Okay, so it's very general, but I will give a general overview of what people can do about nightmares, night terrors, bad dreams, and even bad thoughts that pervade them during the day. This is where, and I usually don't like doing this, but this is where it helps to sometimes see the brain like a computer, right? Now, the brain is not a computer. The brain is far more complex than a computer. It's far more organic and whole than that. But when it comes to nightmares, let's talk about it as a computer. So in the computer world, there is this saying, garbage in, garbage out. So in other words, a computer will only spit out what you program into it. So when you're having nightmares, the thing is to look at what you are putting into your brain. And so that basically means what you're talking about with other people, what you're watching as news, what you're looking at as screen entertainment, and basically all the things that go into your brain. Ask yourself if there's something in any of that that might be driving the nightmares, John. Right? So what are your nightmares about? What's the predominant feeling? If it's fear, then is there anything that you are pouring into your brain that is making you fearful? If it's anger, then is there anything that you're pouring into your brain that is making you angry? And sometimes we would like to think that what we look at for entertainment doesn't affect us. And it probably is okay in the long run, but if you're getting nightmares, then you would like to do what you can to keep that under control. So for that question, Hurricane, the answer is to look at the inputs, to see what you are putting into your brain, to see if there's anything that you can control, because the subconscious part of the brain becomes such a huge world that it is very difficult for us to get a grip of what it's capable of. All of our memories, all of our emotions, but all things that we put into it in a day-to-day basis meld together to create this experience that we still don't understand called nightmares.
Thank you, Doug. So that as you were talking, something came out to my mind. Is there any? I mean, we all heard this, especially with kids. If you watch a movie or something that's bad before you sleep, you might have nightmares. I mean, is that really an actual fact? I mean, we've grown up with it as almost a scare tactic, but it is, it's something that I don't know if we experience it, but some people might. But is there really a correlation to those things in terms of, like, I know you said garbage in, garbage out, but you watch a horror movie or something and it just kind of reflects, or you see something, I mean, that's bad, an accident or something that can actually generate those
Yeah.
I guess, night sweats. So yes, sorry.
Yeah. So basically, when we have a dream or a nightmare, We don't know if it is the brain trying to work something out, feelings that we have had, something that we have experienced in reality, something that we have watched as a movie, or a bad prawn that you had the night before, right? We do not know. However, you end up becoming an expert on yourself. So if you're having nightmares and there's a particular series that you're watching that is about, I don't know, you're in the head of a psychopathic killer or something, try doing without those series for 3 or 4 weeks and see if it makes a difference. That's doing a scientific experiment on yourself, and then you can become the judge as to what's going on in your own head. But if you don't give it a go, you won't know.
I love that. That's great. I mean, that's the easy solution. I mean, you're right. You just have to stop and see what happens, right? I mean, if it
Yeah, that's right.
it doesn't take much, right? It's just some simple what do you call it? Process of elimination. I test it out, I remove it in my life and see what the outcome is.
Okay. So there has been some evidence on, let's say, if violent movies makes a difference to people's behavior. And first of all, we've got to look at what a movie is. We know the difference between real life and a movie is often designed to try to simulate real life to give close to a real life experience. However, we still know the difference. So what the evidence shows is, let's say, a movie that has very violent themes will make people more violent if they are already violent, right? But people who are not violent tend not to react aggressively to that. However, depending on how you want to look at that information shows that what we watch does make a difference to our thought processes, to our behaviors and our motivations. The question is not whether it does or not, but how much. How much is too much and how much is acceptable? So for example, we have plenty of studies showing that excessive computer and screen use is bad for your physical and mental health. And we have no study showing that watching a whole lot of movies is good for your mental health. But we will still end up watching movies because the question is not whether it's good or not, how much? And how much is entertainment, and how much do we then do to the detriment of ourselves? That's the difficult question, and science doesn't have the answer there.
It is amazing. I mean, with all the science we have, and there's still things that we're working on, and I know it's just going to be a long journey. Thank you, by the way, Doctor, for
Oh, that's all right.
I appreciate that. So again, folks, we are still live, so please, feel free to join us. Call now, 732-332-8493, and send in your chat, and we'll have more. We have a few minutes left with Doctor, so you can certainly give you some answers, real-time answers. In the meantime, I have an additional question here that we can catch on. Are we ready?
Yeah.
So I have met many people in my life, and at many times was betrayed, but despite always being great and fair to them. How do people justify that, and how can I regain trust moving forward? I'm finding myself in a distant mode and avoid socializing, including social media. Jesse, I think this is almost related to that first question.
Yeah. Okay, so this is very sad. I'm sorry to hear that that's somebody's experience. Unfortunately, this becomes the experience of a lot of people, and it has to do with something very basic to our human existence, and that's trust. Trust in the brain is mediated by a chemical called oxytocin. It's the same chemical that mediates our feelings of love. So the feeling that we get on and we belong together and we can trust each other is mediated by that chemical of oxytocin. All right, so why people actually betray each other unfortunately has to do with another huge evolutionary balance that we have between our selfish genes and altruism. So in other words, a part of us that really wants to take care of each other for our own survival. So you'll see in parents, parents will altruistically take care of their children so that they thrive and survive. But there's also a point where they say, hey, I need some time to myself. I need to do my stuff. Otherwise, I'm not going to be good for anybody. And so they become selfish. An extreme form of selfishness is when your selfishness impinges on the freedom of other people and you actually start hurting them. And betrayals belong in this situation. So if somebody cheats on you, that ends up being a very bad hurt. However, the question was also, okay, what am I going to do about this, right? Now, the wonderful thing about the brain is that it is wired to learn. From any positive experience you have or from any negative experience you have, the brain can learn. So as painful as it is, the question is, what have I learned from all those betrayal experiences? Then how can I use the knowledge from those betrayal experiences to serve me better in the future? And so basically, if you're then looking to either go out with another person or trying to trust another person, you may have a boundary in there that you didn't have before, or you may ask a question that you didn't before, or you may just be a little bit reticent where you wouldn't before. And before we start saying this is a bad thing, all right, it's actually good for us to have boundaries to each other. But then when people fulfill the expectation of the boundary, so in other words, when you find that you can trust somebody, you go, oh, good, I can trust this person. But then you have to think of how to test for the next step, because every bit of trust takes a little bit of courage to get to. And when you get to the next level of trust with that courage, you will then find yourself in what we call deep water. And again, you will find out if you can trust somebody or not. And this is how good friendships are made. This is how good relationships are made. This is how good trusting relationships with parents are made, by being able to say, no, you can trust me. Or when you find out that you can't, that there is forgiveness and there's a second chance, because both people have brains that can learn from the experience and can try again to get it right the next time. The love is in the trying, Hurricane. We have to try with each other. We have to try to get it right.
It is not easy, I have to say. Well, again, it doesn't matter. Relationship in general are complex. with close ones, friends, family, even sometimes your kids, your spouse, your significant other, yes, or colleagues, partners. I mean, I know we've had a couple of questions that came up in previous shows about this, and yeah, I mean, it's always difficult, when it comes to that. So thank you, Doctor. This next question, I am actually confused. I think we have. I somehow it looks familiar, but I don't think we've covered it before.
Okay, before we get onto that, Hurricane, there's just another little thing to be said, because you will find that the closer somebody is to you, the more they will hurt you. Now, I don't mean abuse you, okay, or strike you down, but it's like, and it was the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer that came up with this idea that as humans, it's all like we're porcupines that have all these quills, and the closer we get to each other, the more we're going to wound each other with these quills. But the thing is, we want to get close because we are social creatures. That's what we need to do. So even if you get hurt, you still love and you still trust. In fact, a hallmark of a good relationship is not that there's no hurt, because if there's no hurt, then you're probably not in relationship. But it's being able to rebound back from the hurt to say, okay, where did we go wrong then? Can we keep trying to reach for trust and love? So I just thought I'd put that in, Hurricane.
Thank you. And again, I mean, for the audiences, I mean, trust, to your point, trust is a big thing. And yeah, I mean, but it's surprising that you said that, if you're not having some sort of hurt, I mean, it's not working out. Something has to be there. So, I mean, there shouldn't be any, but I guess, it is part of life. I mean, you have to have some of it.
Well, yeah, in fact, this is one of the myths, okay, that good relationships are all in harmony and feel good all the time, right? We now have studies to show that couples that argue stay together longer than couples that don't. And that's because that people who don't argue are probably falling apart one unspoken word at a time, okay? And that's a bit of a shock because we live in a world of movies and series where we feel good if things work out. We think that life is bad if it doesn't work out. But life is not a movie. It is not a Netflix series, okay? In fact, if you have conflict, if you found just more conflict with your spouse after being together 10 or 20 years, then give yourself a pat on the back, because that means that you have grown closer, right? It's another problem and it feels horrible, but you have actually grown closer. If at any stage you have just harmony with your spouse, be afraid, because it means that you're not growing closer.
Well, I mean, you'll be strangers if that's the case. I mean, you're right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I've been married 20 years, and I can tell you, I mean, it's not always a peachy, thing. I mean, there's always sometimes you don't always, agree on things. I mean, there's just a fact. Doesn't matter. I want to eat here. I want to eat here. And we have to compromise. See, that we can talk about compromise later, but that's a big, game in plan, right? So you have to, and you're right. It's like, that's to your point. You said Netflix and movies, because there's this visual effect that we all have. There's like almost a perception and an expectation that how it should look like, but the reality is that's not true. I mean, people argue all the time, and here it doesn't mean you argue, like to your point, like we're throwing each other stuff, or like getting crazy, get physical. It's more like I mean, you can disagree. I mean, that's the other thing. We can agree to disagree, and but the way to handle that, I think, is the approach itself is what makes a difference and keeps you going. Because to your point, I mean, I think today in society, I notice the younger couples, they tend to separate quick. I mean, the divorce rates are high, and we've talked about this before. That's because there is no compromise, but they expect that it's a beautiful thing, and we're supposed to just be in harmony 100%, and there's going to be no argument. The first argument, they give up, and it's over. And again, I'm not an expert in this matter, but I've seen it long enough to know that it's happening that way. And but you're right. It takes two to tango, as we say.
and this is something that I'm currently doing a lot of research on, Hurricane. So that's another thing that we could have a whole session on if you want. But it is just a myth to think that you've got a good relationship if you're in harmony all the time. Okay. In fact, you've got to wonder. The thing is that it feels really bad to be in disharmony and in conflict. But this is why you will often hear me say that the love is in the trying, right? Just don't walk away. Just hang in there and say, I'm going to give this another go. I'm here for you. We're going to work through this. That's why we're together. And there are some things, and couples have told us, and these are couples that have been together more than 40 years, the things that they argued about when they were married 1 year, they are still arguing after being married 41 years, okay? So there are certain things that do not go away. And you carry that with you as part of your life's journey, as part of your relationship journey. But it doesn't mean that the love's not there. In fact, love actually begins when harmony finishes.
Well, that's deep. That's super deep. and by the way, Doctor, I know you have some work that's being done and published, I think, in this area. That's I think on the site, right? Just to share with the audiences, So.
Okay. So we've got a book deadline. We're working on a book at the moment, and it's talking about building resilient relationships, because we live in a world where there's a lot of mental illness, a lot of isolation, a lot of hyper individuality. And the question is, how do you actually have a good relationship in the midst of all of that? And so we're on the home straight, but basically before Christmas, this book should be out. And it's basically written for couple therapists, but everybody will be able to look at the scientific evidence of what it really takes to keep a relationship together in the long term.
Well, Doctor, thank you. Congratulations for that, actually. So we'll look forward to seeing the book or reading the book and sharing it with the people, and maybe even talking about some of the stuff. And maybe, I'll take you on that one and having a session just about this, because I think everybody that lives is always interested in this topic.
Well, this is co-authored with my spouse, who is an academic professor, and we've got a lot of conflict as to what order the chapters should go in at the moment. Okay, we haven't resolved that one.
Well, listen. I mean, there you go. Disagreement. It happens. It happens at the kitchen. It happens at the shopping. It happens at the trip. It happens everywhere. It happens right in the book. Listen. but that makes it healthy. I think yeah, that's the other thing. People, again, the expectations, like everybody's beachy, everybody is like, just 100% nothing, but it does never works that way. So well, Doctor, I know we're coming to the end of the hour here, folks. I mean, hope that you've received a lot of information through these questions, and please feel free to join us again. The next session will be at the end of July, so the last Friday of July. I look forward to it. Again, send in your questions, and we ran out of questions for this week, but I think I have a couple more for that we can start the show. But I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to have plenty. And I know if not, we have Doctor. He can touch some of these topics, and we can cover a lot of grounds. But definitely, your interaction is important, and I know Doctor is eager to hear live, interactions and seeing your chat and things. And again, this is anonymous. You don't have to put your name. You don't have to. We don't have to see your profile. I mean, if you can just do it. I know that's the thing. On social media, your profile is there, and we know who it is. So maybe that's the challenge. But certainly, if you call in, you can just state your name as Mr. G or Mrs. K, whatever. Pick a name. It doesn't matter to me. You can be an alien. It doesn't matter. But the key here, let's have that discussion. And this is an opportunity that is beyond believe. And doctor's time is valuable, and he really takes it. Again, today he is sick and he is with us. So again, thank you so much, Doctor, for making it. You look great, though, and I'm glad
Thank you very much.
I have to say, I am very relieved to know that everything is light, and thank God you passed that critical moment. I mean, it's usually a couple of days where it's kind of rough, but your vitamins and all that stuff. I'm sure you taking care of business there. So hey, well, Doctor, thank you so much for being with us, and greetings to your partner in crime there.
Yep.
As always, and she's part of this. She's behind the scenes. And maybe we'll have her on that show. I don't know when we talk about the book. I don't know.
Not a bad idea, Hurricane. I couldn't do it without her. Okay, and it's not just behind the scenes. Believe me. Okay, it's a journey that we're taking together, as I know that you're taking a journey together, because we're all trying to get through this crazy thing called life, Hurricane.
Yes.
And thanks for the work that you do.
No, thank you. And again, like I always say, I can't do it without you. So and all my guests, that you guys are the real, mojo, the real core, of the network and what we're delivering here as information and resources. So thank you so much. Folks, okay, so this is it for today. Hopefully this show will be replaying, so please catch on. It will be playing all over the place. So yes, feel free to review it, to listen. There's a lot of information, and you probably need a couple of sessions to just dissect some of that. But certainly, we look forward to having you on the next one, end of July. So stay tuned. Bye for now.